The bakery had been called Henderson's for 40 years. Marcus knew this because the previous owner, a man named Walt Henderson who was 73 and whose hands showed every year of the bread he'd made with them, had told him on the afternoon they signed the papers. Walt had stood in the middle of the kitchen he was selling and looked around it with the expression of someone taking a last photograph with their eyes, and then had told Marcus that the oven on the left ran 5 degrees hot, and the display case latch needed lifting before pulling, and the neighborhood came in for the cinnamon rolls on Saturday mornings with the specific loyalty of people who had organized a small but genuine portion of their happiness around a particular thing being reliably there. Marcus had listened to all of it. He'd written the oven temperature in a notebook because he was someone who wrote things in notebooks. He'd practiced the display case latch 3 times before Walt left, because the last thing you wanted on your first Saturday morning was to be fighting hardware in front of customers who had been coming here since before you knew the place existed. The purchase had taken 8 months from idea to keys. 8 months of the kind of focused, methodical work that Marcus did with anything he decided was worth doing. The business plan he'd built from scratch, the financial projections, the market analysis of the block on Sutter Street where Henderson sat between a dry cleaner and a small hardware store, the conversations with 3 different lenders before finding one whose terms he could work with, the negotiations with Walt that had been conducted with the mutual respect of 2 people who both wanted the thing to go well and were willing to be patient to get there. He'd told Chloe on a Sunday afternoon at the kitchen table, with the papers in front of them and a cup of hot chocolate in front of her, because she was 9 now, but hot chocolate was still the correct accompaniment to serious conversations. She'd looked at the papers, looked at him. "We own a bakery?" she said. "We own a bakery," he said. She picked up her hot chocolate with both hands and thought about this for a moment. "Do we know how to make bread?" "I've been practicing for 6 months," he said. "You've eaten some of the practice without knowing it." She considered this. "The good bread we've been having at dinner?" "Yes, okay," she said. Then yes, she said it in the tone of someone rendering a verdict that had been pending and was now official. She'd started coming in on Saturday mornings at 5, which he'd expected her to find intolerable, and which she'd instead adapted to with the practical efficiency she brought to most things that were non-negotiable. She handled the display case. Her height made it natural. She could see exactly what was depleted and what needed rotating, and she talked to the customers with the interested directness of someone who was genuinely curious about what people wanted and why, which turned out to be a significant asset in a neighborhood bakery where half the business was people coming for a specific thing and feeling seen when they got it, without having to explain. The cinnamon rolls were on Saturdays, as Walt had promised. Marcus had spent 3 weeks reverse engineering Walt's recipe from memory and instinct, and a single written note Walt had left him that said, "Brown sugar, not white, more than you think, and resting time matters more than the recipe." He'd gotten there on the 4th attempt, and the first Saturday he'd put them in the display case, a woman named Eleanor, who'd been coming to Henderson's for 22 years, had taken 1 bite and looked at him across the counter with an expression he was going to carry for a long time. "Walt taught you?" she said. "Walt left me a note," he said. She looked at the cinnamon roll. "He left you the right note. The bakery opened at 6 on weekdays, 7 on weekends. He was in the kitchen by 3:30 on weekdays, 4 on Saturdays, 4:30 on Sundays." Nadia had adapted her schedule in the way Nadia always adapted, without complaint and without calculation, coming to the apartment to be there when Chloe woke up and getting her to school on the days Marcus needed to be in the kitchen before Chloe was awake. The system had the patched-together quality of most systems built for real lives rather than ideal ones, and it worked the way patched-together systems worked when the people operating them were committed to the work. He'd been open for 4 months when Patricia Vance walked through the door. He recognized her immediately, which he'd expected. She was not a person who became less distinct with time, and he'd spent 14 months working at a sufficient proximity to her that her face was part of his internal catalog. She looked the same. Good coat, the quality of someone who made decisions and moved on from them without looking back, which had always been simultaneously her most effective professional characteristic and the one that had produced the termination meeting. She didn't recognize him immediately. He could see this in the way she looked at the display case, at the board above the counter, at the bakery generally, with the assessing glance of someone choosing between options. She was looking at the croissants when she looked up and found him behind the counter looking at her. The recognition, when it arrived, was visible. He watched it move through her face, the initial placement, the context retrieval, the landing, and then the professional composure that was Patricia Vance's most practiced capability assembled itself around whatever the recognition had produced. "Mr. Webb," she said. "Miss Vance," he said. "Good morning. What can I get you?" She held his gaze for a moment. He could see her recalibrating, the rapid assessment of someone who had walked into a situation they hadn't expected and was deciding how to inhabit it. "You own this bakery," she said. It wasn't a question. She'd had enough information in 3 seconds. "I do." She looked around the space briefly, the worn wooden counter, the display case with the croissants and the morning pastries, the coffee setup, the small tables along the wall where 3 customers were sitting with cups and a morning that had started well enough to put them in a chair with nowhere specific to be. "It's good," she said. Something in it was genuine. He'd learned to read genuine from performed in enough rooms to know the difference. "Thank you," he said. "The croissants are from this morning. I also have a seeded sourdough that just came out if you want something to take." She looked at him. Not with hostility. That wasn't Patricia Vance's mode. Hostility was too imprecise for her. With the particular careful attention of someone who has been caught in an unexpected situation and is working out the correct response. "I'll have a coffee and a croissant," she said, "and a few minutes of your time if you can spare them." "I can," he said. He meant it, which surprised him slightly. He'd thought about this moment in the abstract, had thought in the months before and after the termination about what it would be like to be in the same room as Patricia Vance again, and what he'd feel, what he actually felt, standing behind the counter with the coffee in his hand, was something close to equanimity. Not indifference. Equanimity, the real kind that had been earned by going through a thing rather than around it. He brought her the coffee and the croissant to the table in the corner, the one with the best light in the morning. He'd put it there deliberately when he was arranging the furniture, because the light came through the Sutter Street window at a particular angle from 8 to 10, and it made the table feel different from the others, warmer, like a place someone had thought about. He sat across from her. He had a few minutes. The morning rush had peaked. 2 of the 3 other customers were finishing up. His part-time help Daria was handling the counter. "I heard about the Ketam filing," Patricia Vance said, 8 months ago, when the Doge determination came through. "I heard you were no longer in the role," he said. She held her cup. "I wasn't." A pause. "I'm consulting now. Independent, it's a different kind of work." "Is it better?" he said. She looked at him with the expression she'd had in the termination meeting, but reversed somehow, the same precision, but pointed in a different direction. "Inward rather than outward. It's more honest," she said. Which is a qualified answer. Qualified answers are usually the accurate ones. She looked at her croissant. Then she picked it up and took a bite, and there was a brief silence in which the croissant was doing what a good croissant did, which was make the person eating it stop thinking about other things. "This is excellent," she said. "The lamination took me a while to get right," he said. "The layering process. You have to develop a feel for when the dough is ready and when it needs more time. And the only way to develop the feel is to do it wrong enough times that you know what wrong feels like." She looked at him. "You're talking about the croissant." "I'm talking about the croissant," he said. She set it down, looked at him directly in the way that was characteristic of her, the full beam attention that had made her effective and had also, in the termination meeting, then the thing that made the meeting feel airless. "I made a mistake," she said. He waited. "The bolt," she said. "The grade 8 versus grade 5 issue. You were right. The compliance exposure was real, and the contract interpretation question was not above your pay grade. That was a dismissive thing to say, and it was also factually incorrect, which I knew at the time and said anyway." "I know," he said. "The decision to terminate you was—" She stopped. Started again in the way of someone who had practiced a thing enough that they could say it accurately. "It was wrong. The reasoning I used was available to me, and I used it, and it was still wrong." He looked at her. He thought about the parking lot 4 years ago, the banker's box, all the parking lots and boxes since. He thought about the overnight shift and the delivery van and Walt's note in brown sugar, more than you think. "Why did you come in here?" he said. "This morning specifically." "I've been in this neighborhood for a meeting," she said. "I've walked past this block 3 times in the last 2 weeks. This morning I came in." She paused. "I didn't know it was yours." "Would you have come in if you had?" She held his gaze. "I don't know," she said. "Probably not," which is its own answer. "It is," he agreed. She looked around the bakery, at the counter and the display case, and Daria helping a woman choose between 2 things, and the light coming through the Sutter Street window at its particular angle. "This works," she said. Not the polite kind of works. The kind that meant she was reading the room, and the room was reading as functional and real. "It's starting to," he said, 4 months in. "The Saturday mornings are the anchor. The regulars come first, and the new people come, because the regulars are already there. The cinnamon rolls," she said. Word traveled. "It usually does," she said, "when something is the real thing." He looked at her. There was something in the way she'd said it that wasn't about cinnamon rolls. "I owe you more than an apology for the termination," she said. "The qui tam resolution, the relator's share, that process is concluded," he said. "I know. I mean something else." She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "I'm working with 2 companies right now on compliance restructuring. Post-audit, post-exposure situations where the governance failed, and they're trying to build something that actually works." She paused. "What you identified in the Bolt situation, the way you saw the compliance exposure and documented it and escalated it, that's not a standard skill set. Most people see the dollar amount and stop there. Most people are making a different calculation," he said. "Yes," she said. "And the calculation is wrong, and it costs them eventually." She looked at him steadily. "I'm not offering you something that diminishes what you've built here. This," she gestured at the bakery, "is real, and it's yours. And I'm not suggesting you walk away from it. But I'm building a consulting practice, and I'm looking for people who understand the actual architecture of compliance failure. And I'd like to talk to you about whether there's a version of collaboration that works around what you've built." He looked at the counter, at Daria, who was 22, and learning with the focused enthusiasm of someone who had found work they were good at the display case, and the croissants, and the sourdough cooling on the rack. and the cinnamon roll pan for Saturday that he'd need to prep tomorrow night. He thought about the mornings. 3:30. 4. 4:30. The smell of the kitchen when the first bake was in, and the building was still dark, and he was the only thing awake on the block, or almost the only thing. The Saturday woman, Eleanor, and her expression when she'd taken the first bite. He thought about the bolt, about the meeting and the parking lot and the documentation he'd kept and the Ketom filing and the 7 months of waiting. "I'm not leaving the bakery," he said. "I'm not asking you to. I'm here 6 days a week. The 7th I spend with my daughter." "Consulting is flexible by definition," she said. "I'm not looking for someone in an office. I'm looking for someone with a specific kind of judgment, applied remotely and on a project basis." He looked at her. She was, he understood, doing something that cost her something. Patricia Vance was not a person who revised decisions in public. The revision she was performing now, sitting across from a man she'd fired over a $4 bolt in a bakery on Sutter Street, required something from her that her professional architecture didn't make easy. "What you said in the meeting," he said, "about contract interpretation being above my pay grade. It was wrong," she said. "I said it, and I knew it was wrong. I want to understand why," he said, not with anger, with the genuine curiosity of someone who reads systems and wants to understand what had produced a specific output. She was quiet for a moment. "Because the alternative required stopping a process that I'd authorized and that had cost savings I'd already reported upward," she said, "and stopping it would have required me to tell people above me that I'd approved a decision that was flawed. The termination was cleaner than the correction." "Except it wasn't," he said. "Except it wasn't," she agreed. "It was cleaner in the moment and expensive in every direction after that." He looked at his hands on the table, his hands that had learned, over 4 months, the specific work of bread, the feel of a dough that needed more time, the temperature of the oven that ran 5 degrees hot, the lift and turn of a loaf that was ready. "I'll think about it," he said. "The consulting conversation. That's all I'm asking for. I want to be clear about something," he said. She waited. "The reason I'm willing to have the conversation is not the apology," he said. "The apology is," he thought about the right word. "It's noted. It's genuinely noted. But it's not the reason." "What is the reason?" "The work matters," he said. "What you're describing, companies that have failed on compliance and are trying to build something real, that's work that matters. The bolt wasn't the only bolt. There are a lot of bolts in a lot of batches, and most of them are approved, because the people approving them are making the calculation you described. Cleaner in the moment." He looked at her. "If there's a way to work on that from a bakery on Sutter Street on a project basis, I'm interested in the conversation." She looked at him for a moment. Then she looked at the bakery again, the whole of it, with the full reading a room attention that had always been her genuine capability underneath the things she'd done with it. "Walt Henderson used to come into my building," she said. "On Morrison. There was a Henderson's on Morrison 15 years ago. He had 3 locations," Marcus said, before he scaled back. "The cinnamon rolls," she said. "The same ones," he said. "Brown sugar, more than you think." She almost smiled. It was a different kind of almost smile than she'd produced in any of the meetings he'd been in with her. Less managed, less pointed at a specific outcome. "I'll have one on Saturday," she said. "They go fast," he said. "Come before 8. She stood, put on her coat with the efficiency of someone whose time was accounted for in intervals. She looked at the display case on her way out, at the croissants and the morning pastries, and then at Daria, who was restocking the napkins with the cheerful competence she brought to everything. At the door she turned. "Mr. Webb," she said. "Marcus," he said. A pause. "Marcus," she said it like she was trying out the weight of it. "I'm sorry it took a bolt and a federal filing and a bakery on Sutter Street." "Most things take longer than they should," he said. "Yes," she said. "They do." She went out into the Sutter Street morning. He watched her through the window, the good coat, the particular walk. The woman who had made the wrong calculation in a meeting and had spent some significant portion of the time since then understanding that she had. He went back behind the counter. Daria had a question about the sourdough restock. He answered it, and then went to check the oven on the left, which ran 5 degrees hot, and required the specific attention of someone who had been told the truth about it and had chosen to remember. He turned the temperature down 5 degrees. That night at the kitchen table he drew the napkin picture, while Chloe did her homework across from him. She was working on long division, with the focused ferocity she brought to things she was still conquering, erasing and rewriting with conviction. He drew a bakery window. Simple, specific. The warm light inside visible from the dark street outside. The shapes of bread in the display. Something that looked the way Henderson's felt at 3:30 in the morning when the first bake was in, and he was the only thing awake on the block. He wrote underneath it, very small, "The light stays on." He folded it into the napkin. Chloe looked up from her long division. "What did you draw?" "Something about the bakery," he said. She looked at him in the way she looked at him sometimes, the way that was older than 9. "Are you okay?" "Yes," he said. "Better than okay." She considered this. Went back to her long division. Erased something, rewrote it, examined the result. "Dad," she said. "Yeah, I think the bakery is the best thing we've done." He looked at his daughter, at the homework and the eraser and Gerald the rabbit sitting on the chair beside her because she still brought him downstairs sometimes in the evenings, and the kitchen that smelled faintly of the bread he'd brought home to practice a new shaping technique on. "Me too," he said. Outside, Sutter Street did its night things. Tomorrow morning at 3:30 he'd be in the kitchen. Saturday at 5 Chloe would be beside him. Eleanor would come for her cinnamon roll before 8, and maybe Patricia Vance would too, and the light through the Sutter Street window would arrive at its particular angle and make the corner table feel like someone had thought about it. He turned off the kitchen light at 10. He was back in it at 3:30. The oven on the left ran 5 degrees hot. He turned it down 5 degrees, the same as always, the specific correction for the specific reality of the thing, and started the bread.